Supergirl has got a new #1, this time for the DC All-In Initiative. Released in 2025, it's always interesting to just track what's going on with the Girl of Steel, the Maid of Might. She's had many a stop and start, and each new reboot or kind of reset tends to try and find a space for her. So what space is being carved out now? For context, we're heading into time recording the Summer of Superman, so there's a lot of Superman family things flying around. This outing is a fascinating one, because it's not quite hard reset, but it does bring back some of the concerns from when she first started out, such as being in Superman's shadow and where does she belong? What's her role? And also, what does she want to do? For some, these questions may have been answered, for others, they may not have heard them before, and others may feel they have not been answered satisfactorily, so there's much to explore. This work also has numerous references to the Silver and Bronze Ages, basically pre-Crisis Supergirl before she died. There's even mention of her hair-changing comb. It's an interesting mix, and if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that we love to talk about Supergirl here. I love to talk about Supergirl. We've covered her 70s solo series, her 80s solo series, not the 90s, not yet. We've covered a bunch of obscure characters from her early days, 2 of whom are allegedly slated to come back in this new outing. Time for recording, as always. So there's a lot to talk about, and it's time to take a look at Supergirl. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and it's Supergirl time. This Supergirl #1 is written and drawn by Sophie Campbell, with colors by Tamara Bonvillain. And Supergirl did get a new costume for this, designed by Art Germ, that while retaining the skirt has a bit more of a sporty vibe to it, and also stays in keeping with her overall look. So her getting a new costume is very much par for the course across the eras and also part of her history. There was a period where she switched her costume up on the regular, this under Mike Sekowsky. It started during her time in Adventure Comics but would carry over into her own series. There was a contest where fans designed a new costume. They did cycle through many of the entries, and when they did, those people were credited, which is a cool moment. We did a whole video on it, I'll link it down below. That period is also lightly referenced in this issue. As for where this one starts off, it's hopping right into some action, sort of, just a tiny bit, a snippet. It's more to set up the tone of the type of action. So we see Supergirl fighting Princess Shark, who is trying to take over Metropolis. Metropolis will soon become Sharkopolis. It's inevitable. It better not be, because I can barely say Sharkopolis. The eye on the octopus dress is a design detail left me wondering if it was sentient. And that shark detail had some already planning a collab between her and King Shark. They are both royalty, or so it seems. Princess Shark is a new entry for this issue, even though she does sound like something you would see in the Silver Age. We do get some narration boxes explaining who Kara is at the moment, her status quo. There's some little things to note. Streaky's back after a blip of being with Power Girl. Also, her adoptive parents are Eliza and Jeremiah Danvers, and they do mention the DEO, but they also have a bit of a different look. There's a blending across the eras occurring here. New 52, Rebirth, pre-Crisis, also maybe potentially some CW series influence. So this is very much an entry of take it as it is and see what's being presented, because that's going to set up the status quo. And for some that may be perplexing, for some that may be welcome, for some it may be off-putting. Before we head to the Fortress of Solitude for my daily Kandor patrol, ever since Kal was exiled from Kandor for the Phantom Zone incident, I've really had to pick up the slack there. That feels like a good place for an editor's note. Sometimes it just feels like one thing after another. Streaky, don't even think about swiping Kandor off the table. So that's the kind of tone and jokes that are present. For some that will land will be a cute cat moment. For others it may make them think about things like, shouldn't Kandor be bolted to the table? We've seen what happens when it isn't.
Earthquake!
Can't forget my yellow ring of Norcan so I don't lose my powers inside. That ring bit is just casually slipped in there. It is also the kind of thing that there could have been an editor's note, but it would have to go pretty far back. This is a pre-Crisis Easter egg. Norcan was a big deal in the original canon. He debuted in Superman 158. He was part of creating Nightwing and Flamebird initially. They were Superman and Jimmy Olsen's superhero identities in Kandor. This was back when Superman was not welcome because people thought that he was hoarding the enlarging technology for himself. They didn't realize it just didn't work. They thought he was just keeping it. Those identities of Flamebird and Nightwing, they would go on to other characters inside of Kandor for a time. When it comes to Norcan in the Supergirl series, he appeared in the 70s run in issue 2. He was dead by that point. It was in the story The Death of a City. It was by Carrie Bates, and in that she found the ring while she was looking for a cure for her professor for his brain disease. And the ring does give her power in the Bottle City. There are lots of moments like that, answering questions that people may ask. And the way that this explanation is slipped in this issue is very reminiscent of that, and how the Silver and Bronze Age there would just be panels that were trying to preemptively explain things before fans could ask them. You can stop the typing before it starts. Why does she still have powers in the Bottle City of Kandor? Although some may be asking, why wouldn't she have powers in the Bottle City of Kandor? You can never avoid all the questions. Now, Supergirl here is seemingly meant to come across as a bit younger, or at least her tone sometimes can come across that way. Barf. Going through the microwave miniaturization tunnel always makes me a little queasy. Uh-oh, a runaway train. This train is under attack by another callback, this time to the Bronze Age, to Lar-On, the werewolf of Krypton. You gotta say the whole thing when your title's that cool. Actually, Lar-On's story is very sad. Lar-On, how'd you get out? Everyone run, go! Editor's note, because there's not one here. Lar-On first debuted in World's Finest 256 in 1979, so the Bronze Age. Now, just as his title describes, Lar-On was a Kryptonian werewolf. He was freed from the Phantom Zone when a scientist in Gotham was trying to access Earth 2. Rookie mistake. We all know you just gotta vibrate real fast or run on a treadmill to get to Earth 2. Or have a magic ring. You gotta know a guy. Now, in Lar-On's story, he was just a regular guy who didn't know he was a werewolf and transformed randomly one night and killed his wife. And since there was no cure, Jor-El sentenced him to the Phantom Zone, alongside all the criminals, until maybe one day they'll find a cure. Harsh. Post-crisis, he debuted in the Rebirth era in Supergirl Rebirth #1, where it's the DEO who accidentally frees him from the Phantom Zone, and it was Zor-El, Kara's father, not Jor-El, who had him placed in the Phantom Zone. He got messed up in that timeline by red kryptonite. So either way, it's a tragic story, but the Rebirth one does tie him a bit more to Supergirl. It gets pretty rough. He's begging Zor-El not to abandon him, not to just put him in the Phantom Zone. It's me, Lar-On. I know you remember. But the audience mightn't. Lar-On cannot be reasoned with, and civilians are in danger, and so Supergirl gets to have this dramatic save where we get to see how in awe people are of her, and she gets to look gorgeous while doing so, complete with magical girl sparkles. Anyone hurt? Supergirl, you're amazing. Way better than Superman. It's not a contest, okay? I'm just glad everyone's safe. I'll be back in a minute to help clean up. Oh my word, she's gonna clean up. Truly, she is a hero. Also, both comic book history and The Incredibles have trained me to expect that bystander, they're gonna end up being a supervillain. It helps that she's also wearing a dress that belongs to one. That's Lesla Lar's dress. More on that later. What the line also pertains to is Supergirl has these conflicted feelings about Superman at the moment. Or more rather about where she fits in relation to him and his legacy. The whole who am I outside of Superman mindset. Depending upon where one is in canon, she's gone back and forth on being past that or not. And this outing is putting her back in a position where she's not quite over it. There is a moment here that maybe could lead to something, or it may not, but it is one that's interesting to examine. It's where Kara goes to try and talk to the Science Council about modifying Lar-On's treatment, and they refuse. They say his treatment is working, even though he just went on a rampage. It paints the Science Council in a potentially bit of a bad light, but it's also something that reflects not the best on Kara, because she's proposing a solution, but she's not willing to step up herself and do anything when they propose one back. Because they offer a kind of ward mentor kind of program where maybe she can watch over Lar-On, which is a lot and putting a lot on her. And is she gonna have to come to Kandor to do that? There are a lot of logistics to work out with that. On the one hand, this could be something that's a seed to maybe position the Science Council as a bit unfeeling and rigid and not dealing with their problems in a way that could lead to potential future issues. However, the scene is more focused on Kara and her not being willing to go through with what they're proposing. So it could be foreshadowing for something for them, something for her, or it could just be a moment. We'll have to see. This is issue 1. We will take the prisoner back into custody. We are adjourned. Do they really think that would be a good idea? Me as a mentor or whatever? I want to help people reform and everything, but I don't know. I know what Cal would do. But what about what I would do? I always feel like I'm in my cousin's shadow. I mean, yeah, he's Superman, but maybe I'm keeping myself there. The only person thinking about Cal right now is you. Also, as one may note, no, the theming is not subtle. This issue wants to make everything clear as to where Kara stands, since in some ways this is meant to be a fresh start, so it's coming out the gate just stating things, which for some may be a bit too on the nose, and for others may be what they're looking for. And for others, again, Miles made this vary in terms of the tone. They may have expected Kara to sound a bit more mature. Now, Kara gets a call from her parents, the Danverses, and they've moved back to Midvale, which is where Supergirl first resided in the Silver Age. Now, Midvale itself debuted in Adventure Comics 227, not in a Supergirl story, but in a Superboy story, where he's getting credit for good acts he didn't perform. And he mentions at one point he was out of town at the Midvale Circus, so he couldn't have done one of them. But Midvale is where Supergirl ended up being. It's where her ship landed close to, it's where the orphanage was that Superman placed her when she first got there. In the original pre-crisis canon, her parents were Fred and Edna Danvers, and they lived in Midvale. They were just ordinary folks from there. And Supergirl did like Midvale. It wasn't something that she had a problem with. This story frames the idea of her returning to Midvale as something she has mixed feelings about. Maybe I'm just being a pill. I have not heard that expression in forever. Maybe Midvale will be fun, seeing my old haunts, my old room, maybe even old friends who are still there. Might not be so bad. My old chromatic supercomb, I thought I'd lost it. Now I'm wondering what my identity should be in Midvale, actually. Okay, this comb. So at first, when Supergirl took on the identity of Linda Lee, yes, a double L, which is something that Superman comments on, and sometimes it gets a little weird. Superman, I have a confession to make. I wanted to arrange a happy marriage for you. I failed both times.
If I ever did marry, It would be to someone super and lovable, like you. We can't marry because we're cousins, though cousins can marry in certain countries here on Earth. We're both from the planet Krypton, where the marriage of cousins is unlawful.
Anyway, when Linda Lee took on her secret identity, at first she wore a wig, but during the 80s series, she got this special comb that could alter molecules, and she would use it to actually change the color and texture of her hair. Because by that point in her series, she was rocking the 80s big hair and the headband. She gets the comb in issue 17 of that run, the 80s run, and it's a running B-plot in that issue that she needs to solve her wig problem. No wig snatching for Supergirl.
Whoa, it still works. Should I use my old Linda Danvers name? Everyone there knows me as Linda. I guess that would be easiest, but maybe I could say Kara is my middle name, and I go by that now. Not that I hated living there, but I've tried so hard to stand on my own 2 feet, be my own hero, do my own thing, and when I think of Midvale, I think of when I had just arrived on Earth, where I was supposed to protect my baby cousin, who turned out to be an adult, and I was just looking for a purpose, I guess. Feels like going backward. Back to a time when nobody even knew I existed. At first I had to keep my superheroic secret, waiting for Cal to give me the go-ahead to go public. Wow, I hope I don't start crying if I run into Dick Malvern's parents. I wonder if they're still living there after he passed away. But maybe it'll be nice to get out of Metropolis for a bit, or maybe it'll be terrible, or maybe I'm just way overthinking this.
A Dick Malvern mention. Now, there are a lot of things mentioned here, and the way the flow is, it can come across a bit as almost a reference dump. A look at all the references that are here, but that may only occur for people who are aware of the things that are being referenced. But even for those who do not, it is a bit exposition-y in terms of the tone. It could have been a bit more conversational and conveyed the same messaging. But as mentioned, mileage is going to vary. However, either way, it would be odd for her to not go by Linda when she visited her parents in Midvale. And it raises questions as to how she views her identity, because if one is going by Silver and Bronze Age logic, she very much did feel like Linda. It wasn't just something she put on, it was who she was as well. It was who she'd come to be. Less so obviously than Cal being Clark, because he started off that way from an infant. Now this sequence seems more there to set up the idea that she's not entirely comfortable with what her identity is. She's seeking it out, which is something she's gone through in the past. The idea of her wanting to go by Kara, since it's what she feels more like, could really work. But perhaps it's just reordering how some of the things are presented in the balloon. For example, going,
I wonder if I'll go by Kara. No, I guess I can't. Everyone there knows me as Linda. I could always say it's my middle name, but I don't know.
This feels a bit more ponderous and conversational, less info dumpy. But you let me know what you think. One thing that definitely needs to be noted and celebrated about this, and I'm sure some of you already noticed, do you see it? They're thought bubbles. Those are thought balloons. Those are thought balloons. We are seeing thoughts. Now as for what's being referenced here. She's talking about her time in the orphanage. When she first arrived, she was Superman's secret weapon, and the world wasn't supposed to know there was a Supergirl. So she had to have these kind of secret adventures where she was always trying to hide the fact that Supergirl existed, be that in Superman's comics or in her own stories. Her presence was revealed to the world in Action Comics 285 in 1962, and she had debuted back in Action Comics 252 in 1959. So there were years of stories of her being a secret, in quotes. Now, Dick Malvern was a big deal, a much bigger deal than the way he's just thrown into that sentence would have you believe. He was a boy who was at the orphanage with her. Originally his name was Dick Wilson, but then he got adopted. He was her love interest and boyfriend, and he fulfilled the portion of the story that was trying to expose her secret identity. Now he was in a bit of limbo for a bit post-crisis, but he was brought back in the 90s as love interest for Linda Danvers, who was different than Kara. It got convoluted there for a bit. But his storyline finished off pre-New 52 in 2004, where he died of cancer. It was really sad, and he confessed that he'd always known Supergirl's identity, and she gave him a kiss. It was depressing. This happened in the solo series where canon could be nebulous, but it was a resolution to the story of Dick Malvern and pre-crisis, pre-Peter David Supergirl. The point is, Dick, or Richard, was a big moment for Supergirl in terms of her history. So you'll be curious to see what parts of that are in play here. Maybe this is what that whole new history of the DC universe that Mark Waid is working on time recording is set to reconcile. We're going to reconcile all these things. Probably not. It never reconciles everything. Now, Supergirl goes to Midvale a few weeks later. What was she doing in between? I don't know. She was doing stuff, Lori. Things. When she gets there, she finds the town has gone Supergirl crazy, and she's not sure why, since she hasn't been there in years. And her first thought is not that the town is desperate for tourism, but that someone must have stolen her identity. You know, given the shenanigans that superheroes go through, fair.
I haven't been back here in years, and there's no way anyone here could know who I really am. Could there be someone pretending to be me? Look how busty they made me too. What the heck?
There's a Power Girl joke in there somewhere. There's another little fun nod here. When Supergirl is walking to her house, she calls Crypto Skip. Now, Crypto did have a secret identity as Skippy back in the day. In the New Adventures of Superboy 17 from 1981, there's a cute scene where it shows how he changes. He pulls a lever, and so then he becomes Skippy because he gets some paint on him and he gets a whole new look. This was also the era where Crypto had thought balloons. Good times. Now, when Kara arrives home, she finds a bunch of her old costumes out on the curb. And if you look hard, you can maybe make out which some of them are. It definitely looks like her 70s top, the one that was paired with the hot pants is there.
My parents should know better than to leave my old costumes out here. It could blow my secret identity, putting the whole neighborhood in danger, and
I mean, would it? I'm sure lots of people have Supergirl costumes. I think the logical assumption people would make was that she was just obsessed.
Still, kind of want to keep them. Ugh, why am I getting so sentimental over these dorky, silly old costumes? Well, no harm in rushing them over to the fortress. They're an important part of history, and
I know it's meant to be part joke and part reflecting on objects that one should probably let go but can't, but those costumes were not silly or dorky or poor fashion choices. It is so cool that they were designed by fans, so they genuinely are important.
It is, however, a cute scene, and many can relate to not being able to let go of certain past items. Now, before she can go to the fortress, she's stopped by Clarissa Giltich, aka a deep cut. Near as I can tell, she only appeared in one issue, and that's Action Comics 296, which I happen to remember because that's the issue where Superman gets the ant head because of Red K. But the second story, Supergirl's double, is Alina Thirul, aka Lex's sister story. It's a secret, even though Thirul is just an anagram for Luthor. In this story, Clarissa is one of the guests at the Midvale charity ball, where the theme is Go As Your Hero. She goes as Cleopatra. She's one of the wealthy socialites in the town, and so she goes all out. She's carried in by servants. She's really put out when she doesn't win, and instead Dick and Lena win because they go as Superman and Supergirl, not together. They just had those costumes. Clarissa's role in the story is to be super angry and insulted that she didn't win. In this issue, Clarissa's there to catch up with Kara, aka Linda, and they drop a couple more references, like some other jobs that Supergirl had, like when she worked on the soap opera Secret Hearts. This was also pre-crisis, or the fact that she was a camera operator, which she was in that issue where they met a ghost, which we talked about. Supergirl's had a lot of jobs. There have been many periods where they don't know what to do with her. Clarissa is also here to explain the Supergirl obsession, saying that she's come back to town, and since then the town's just been super into it. She pretends to be a bit above it, but then we see a bit later that no, she's not. She's just as into it.
I have got to figure out who this other Supergirl is. I don't mind Midvale having its own hero, but this one could be trouble.
And indeed, she seems to be, because after Kara saves Clarissa from a car that was about to hit her, Clarissa suddenly calls her an impostor and says that they've been warned about her by the real Supergirl.
I knew she would show up here sooner or later. I was right as usual. Who are you?
This Supergirl has some Marvel rival Squirrel Girl energy. Also, I see you, Super Bunny. Adorable.
It is nice that they're visually distinct. It makes it less confusing. However, it also does beg the question of, hasn't anybody in the town seen footage of Supergirl out and about doing things with the Justice League or other places? Or is this Supergirl say that that's also the imposter? Or are they being brainwashed? That's always an option in these stories. Now, thick with two C's Supergirls douses Kara with something that makes a big P appear in her costume. P for phony, or for Power Girl, that one time that Lois was Power Girl. Speaking of Power Girl, there was a whole little bit about why she rejected having a P on her costume back in the day.
It's changing somehow. Natasha said it would be immune to everything.
It's perfectly calibrated to Kryptonian biosignatures. Specifically yours. That P's in Lex's color scheme. So long, phony girl. Get out of Midvale while you still can.
Ugh. I like that everybody just leaves her there on the ground. One of the things that Clarissa said was that they were warned that she might hurt them. They're being pretty casual about her just being there if that's the case.
Now, Supergirl decides to regroup and stashes her stuff in a hollow tree like she used to in the Silver Age. But when she gets to her front door, her own parents don't recognize her.
She's been replaced. We're gathering some steam for the brainwashing theory.
Oh, a visitor? Hi.
You!
Me? My name's Linda Danvers. Nice to meet you. The very outfit that faux Linda is wearing is itself a reference. Supergirl wore this outfit in Supergirl #1 in 1972 when she moved into Vandar University. Maybe we'll actually get to see some Wanda 5. Here's hoping.
No, I'm Linda. At least, I think I am.
That's an odd last line choice.
It makes me think that it's really easy to convince Kara that she's a clone or something. Or they're making reference to the fact that there have been stories where the Linda we're following is not the actual Linda.
So let's discuss and then get a tad spoilery later on. This issue does do a good job of letting the reader know what kind of tone and energy this series is going for, which appears to be more lighthearted with some exploration of Kara's identity and a lot of nods to the past. It outright states at points what Kara's internal conflict is, although that may just be to start people off and then it may fade a bit back to being more thematic as it goes on. Now we actually have the two. The references are nice to see if one has a long history with Supergirl. Some feel more forced and out of context than others, while there are some that slot right in. The big monologue is an example of a moment that feels a bit more clunky. However, seeing things like her tree or her costumes or her comb, they feel a bit more at home, or just the reference to Skip. Clarissa just slides right in there. That's a fun one that could be easily missed. There is a lot of love for Supergirl here, and the energy is upbeat. It's a pleasant read with some fun thematic throwbacks and some older formatting. Looking at you, Thought Balloons. Good to see you. It also does have a decent hook of a mystery of who's trying to replace Supergirl, although it doesn't come across as overly dire. Now, when it comes to Kara's headspace, some may feel like she's reverted a bit here. Since in recent years, she tends to be depicted as having come more to terms with her position. However, when one starts new Supergirl #1, that tends to come with it. Who is she? New costume, what's she doing? Now, for those who are keeping up with solicits and interviews, or have keen eyes, who this is has already been revealed. Supergirl has a history of duplicates, or people trying to be her, or thinking they are her, and in this case, it looks like we're dealing with Lesla Lar. And in that context, the last line of this makes more sense. We did a whole video on Lesla. She debuted in Action Comics 279 in the story Supergirl's Secret Enemy. She was a scientist from the ball city of Kandor, who, Cliff notes, got jealous of Supergirl and at one point swapped their places and took her life, and even made Kara believe that she was Lesla. It got really intense, and there are some cool stories with her. I titled the video I made on her She Needs a Comeback, and it looks like she had one. We're also supposed to get Satan Girl, who we've also talked about. So potentially we'll have classic Supergirl things on the horizon. It can be interesting to have Supergirl explore her uncertainty about her identity by having others try to take it. As mentioned, there have been some past outings that have been pretty memorable, so it'll be interesting to see how this lands for people. It is fairly beginner friendly, although one will get more out of it if they're familiar with some of the references that are being made. If you're a fan of calling back to those elements or some of the kind of tone of those past eras, it could be very enjoyable. And if you're a new fan jumping in, it does have a fun energy. However, if one prefers a more serious Supergirl or is just not a fan of those eras, this may fall flat. Or some may feel there should be some more connectivity to what's going on in the rest of the universe. Or for some, they may feel it hasn't done enough yet. They may need to wait and see. And some may find some of the canon blending off-putting or confusing, while others may find this to be a perfectly enjoyable start. There is always a lot of ways to take it, and I want to hear your thoughts. And some may just want to talk about her costume. Yay, nay, put whatever you're thinking down below. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. Like, share, comment, subscribe. There will of course be more videos coming soon. I hope to see you there. Bye-bye.